Oh, the Mughal Empire, the thing that I said I'd make a separate video about in the first ever video I made, and then I just didn't. So I'm gonna fix that now. Let's start at the start. That probably seems like the best place to start. The Mughal Empire was founded by a guy named Babur. He wasn't actually named Babur, he was named Zahiruddin Muhammad, but no one actually uses that name, so we'll just go with Babur. This is going to sound like a bit of a tangent, but have any of you heard of the Mongols? The Mongols were a gigantic empire, the largest land empire that the world has ever seen. Eventually though, they did fall. Soon after the fall, a descendant named Timur tried to recreate the empire. He didn't quite succeed, but what he did accomplish was still extremely impressive, and he's widely regarded by many, including me, as one of the greatest generals in history. Babur was descended from Timur on his father's side and from the Mongols on his mother's, so you know this guy was going to do something great. After the death of his father, he inherited the city of Fergana in modern-day Uzbekistan. At the time, many of the groups surrounding him were fighting for control of the city of Samarkand. At the age of 15, he besieged and captured that city. Immediately after capturing it, a rebellion in Fergana ousted him and placed his brother on its throne. As he was marching back to reclaim Fergana, he lost Samarkand to one of his rivals. He tried and failed to reclaim both cities and lost, and was forced to live for a while in the mountains with the hill tribes. Eventually though, he was able to capture the city of Kabul, which is the modern-day capital of Afghanistan. From there, he was able to re-establish his kingdom. Soon after the capture of Kabul, he began slowly but surely pushing his way into India. He won the first battle of Panipat, after which he declared the formation of the Mughal Empire. The only issue with the blazing rate of his expansion was that he was unable to actually consolidate any of his gains. Then he died, so let's cross him off with this unnecessarily complicated family tree. Who's the next one down? Oh, it's
Bumi Young.
That's not even close. They literally just took a text-to-speech robot and fed that word in and had it say it. What is the point of this website? Why does it exist? No one's gonna learn how to pronounce anything from it. Anyway, Humayun faced a lot of rebellion due to his father's aforementioned failure to actually consolidate his gains. He eventually did manage to reclaim his territory after a gap of 20 years, but tragically died the next year by, and I'm dead serious here, tripping over his robe while walking down the stairs holding a pile of books. I'm actually serious. Here's what Wikipedia has to say on the topic. On 24th January 1556, with his arms full of books, was descending the staircase from his library when the muezzin announced the azan. It was his habit, wherever and whenever he heard the summons, to bow his knee in holy reverence. Trying to kneel, he caught his foot in his robe, tumbled down several steps, and hit his temple on a rugged stone edge. He died 3 days later. Let's cross him off the flowchart thing and move on to a truly great emperor. Literally. Next up, as you can clearly see with your very own two eyes, Abu al-Fath Jalaluddin Muhammad Akbar the Great, commonly shortened to Akbar so that people can actually say it. A master of international diplomacy, local politics, and war, he was able to greatly expand the empire in all directions, and I don't just mean militarily. He did plenty of that for sure. He expanded the empire all the way to the Godavari River, but his greatest accomplishments were all internal. He reformed the government and split it into 4 main branches, one for revenue, one for the military, one for religious and judicial purposes, and one to manage the royal household and court. He overhauled taxes by, after much experimentation, settling on a system in which farmers would pay taxes of a value equal to 1/3 of the average crop production of their land over the past decade, leading to more fair taxes that took into account the fact that prices in the countryside are often significantly lower than that in the capital, while also not compromising governmental revenues. He created a new class of elites who were fiercely loyal to him and him alone. He also had a new capital constructed, the city of Fatehpur, literally town of victory, later renamed Fatehpur Sikri because Fatehpur was apparently a very common name for towns in India at the time. Unfortunately for him, his town of victory failed to live up to its name when, for a multitude of reasons, he was forced to abandon the city, moved the capital to the city of Lahore, before moving the capital back to Agra, which is where it was before. He also boosted Mughal trade and expanded the economy, and was a major proponent of coinage reform, replacing the rather bland coins used by his predecessors with a much more artful and visually appealing style. He adopted the policy of religious tolerance for other Muslim sects, and most famously a policy of extreme tolerance towards Hindus, to the point where he literally shows up in several Hindu religious hymns. He repealed the jizya, which was a tax placed on non-Muslims. In fact, by far his most famous courtier, Birbal, was a Hindu. He also created a new syncretic religion called Din-i-Ilahi, meant to be one that, in his mind, borrowed the best aspects of many religions. He didn't get very many people to convert to it, though, however. Birbal was the only Hindu in the entire nation to adopt it. On the 3rd of October 1605, he died of dysentery and became the first Mughal emperor to not leave it extremely unstable for their successor. But the fact of the matter is that he did die, and when one of them die, we move even further down the spider web. Next up is Jahangir, the opium addict. Yep, the first truly awful emperor on our list. I don't even really know what to say about him. He didn't do anything to improve the empire, he was weak and spineless, etc. But one thing that can be said about him, his relationship with Anarkali has become extremely famous for some reason. And that concludes Jahangir. He died of some unspecified cause while on a road trip. So then we move down the thing that I'm running out of words to describe and reach Shah Jahan. You most certainly know at least one of his architectural projects, the Taj Mahal. It was built as a mausoleum for one of his wives, Mumtaz Mahal. Yes, her last name was Mahal. Yes, it confused me too. He also built the Red Fort, the Naulakha Pavilion, which was part of the Lahore Fort, the Agra Fort, the Jama Masjid, and the Wazir Khan Mosque. Near the end of his life, he became very ill and was unable to rule. His eldest son, Dara Shikoh, assumed the position. This greatly upset both of Shah Jahan's other sons, who gathered armies and marched on the city of Agra. His son Aurangzeb eventually defeated the other two and forcefully assumed the position of regent. Despite the fact that Shah Jahan at this point was now fully cured of his illness and was fully able to rule, Aurangzeb declared him unfit to do so and had him placed under house arrest in Agra Fort for the rest of his life. During his imprisonment, Shah Jahan eventually once again became ill and died of the sickness this time. There was a public-facing, highly ceremonial funeral planned for him, but Aurangzeb refused to let it happen. Instead, he was quietly buried with his wife in the Taj Mahal. For this particular death, there's no need to consult the image file that contains information, because we all know that Aurangzeb's going to be the next emperor, but let's just cross out Shah Jahan for consistency's sake. Before we talk about Aurangzeb, let's get this out of the way. He is the most controversial ruler in all of Indian history, and not without good reason. He literally had his father locked up during the latter part of his reign for no reason at all, other than, of course, his ever-present hunger for power. One of the few good things that I can say about him is that he did not care about the religion of the people he employed. The rates of employment and presence in the nobilities of both Hindus and Shia Muslims, the Mughals were Sunnis, which is the other large sect in Islam, grew drastically. Despite the religious scholars at the time feeling negatively about this, Aurangzeb defended his actions. However, he instantly loses all the points he gained for that, and then some with his insistence on harsh enforcement of Sharia law and refusal to respect any religion that isn't Sunni Islam. After learning that the teachings of Brahmins in some provinces were proving attractive to Muslims, he ordered that all non-Muslim schools in those provinces be completely destroyed. He also ordered the punishments of Muslims that, quote, dressed like non-Muslims. He ordered the executions of the Sufi mystic Sarmat Kashni on account of heresy, and the Sikh Guru Tegh Bahadur because he refused to comply with Aurangzeb's forced conversions. He reimposed the jizya, which was the aforementioned tax on non-Muslims. He burned and destroyed temples and monuments that belonged to other religions with no respect to the centuries of history contained within them. He forcefully changed the name of the Hindu holy city of Benares to Muhammadabad, which isn't even a good name. Oddly enough, however, he also funded the construction of many new temples and made several decrees supporting Hindu temples and Sikh gurudwaras, showing that he probably wasn't a fanatical anti-Hindu or anti-Sikh. On top of his religious policy, he also had a habit of brutally executing any and all who dared oppose him, or who held enough power to even be able to oppose him. As would be expected of a ruler like him, he significantly expanded the size of the Mughal Empire, militarily speaking. At the end of his reign, the Mughals controlled basically all of India. He died of illness in 1707. The death of Aurangzeb is often cited as the point at which medieval Indian history shifts to modern Indian history, because after his death, the Mughal Empire started to decline as India would become increasingly more and more dominated by European powers. But he did die, and we do have to cross him off the series of pixels you're currently viewing on your screen, so let's go do that. Next up is Bahadur Shah I. He repealed the religious policies that Aurangzeb had instituted, tried to reform the government, and then died of a, quote, health failure. The floor is made of floor. The ceiling is made of ceiling. The death was caused by health failure. Cross him off the collection of vectors to form an image on my screen before being rasterized and this video is exported. Next up is Jahangir Shah. He was emperor for like 30 seconds after Bahadur Shah died. All I'm going to say about him is this one quote from Sailendra Sen's A Textbook of Medieval Indian History. Jahangir Shah was a worthless debauch who became emperor after liquidating his 3 brothers. He was murdered by professional stranglers, which I did not know existed until I read about his death, and I honestly wish I didn't know they existed. Let's cross him off the graphic that's visible on your screen right now. Going to skip the next 3 emperors because they don't matter at all and only held the throne for about 30 seconds each, and using the same joke 4 times in a row would get pretty repetitive. The only takeaway from this is realizing how unstable the Mughals were at this point. So, the reign of Muhammad Shah. At this point, the empire was breaking up, and huge parts of central India that used to be Mughal now weren't. More and more land was being lost, and many elites were breaking away to form their own nations. The Mughals got beaten up and cannibalized by European trade companies, and things were looking down for them. At this point, I'm just throwing this diagram lift flowchart graphic thing out of the window because the emperors are coming and going too quickly for it to make any sense to use it. Next relevant emperor, Shah Alam II, tried to make sweeping changes to restore the Mughals to their former glory, but failed and placed the Mughals under the protection of the Emir of Afghanistan. The Mughals continued losing more and more land, some to other Indians, some to European trade companies. The British started pushing away into India and taking more and more of it until under Bahadur Shah Zafar it finally ended. The Mughals, who came from nothing to conquer all of India before falling into a cycle of decline and facing countless problems from within, died. Now this is just a guess, no one is really sure, but I think I know why. 2 words: health failure. Thank you for watching. Happy Father's Day Up. I was going to make a 2D game where all the textures were your face, but I ran into some huge issues with the textures that I didn't predict and had absolutely no clue how to fix. You can see the broken version if you want, just come up. I'm sorry, this ending is all I was able to do for you.